In the late 3rd century, Saint Pantaleon was remembered not only as a physician, but as a quiet witness to faith under pressure, serving the sick in Roman territories while refusing public recognition, shaping a life where care, restraint, and inward conviction carried more weight than visible authority. Accounts place Saint Pantaleon's devotion within everyday settings rather than public arenas, where prayer and service unfolded privately, forming a spiritual discipline that valued consistency over display. A posture later echoed in how his memory would be preserved within church spaces rather than public squares. By the early medieval period, fragments associated with Saint Pantaleon were already held with caution, treated as reminders rather than proofs, as communities learned to guard memory carefully, allowing meaning to mature slowly through repetition, silence, and inherited trust rather than immediate explanation. In Madrid, within a long-established church setting, caretakers recorded that a small vial attributed to Saint Pantaleon remained solid for most of the year, drawing attention only near late July. When observation replaced commentary, an expectation was shaped by familiarity rather than surprise. Further south, in Ravello along the Amalfi coast, a parallel tradition developed, preserved within a quieter local rhythm, where the same relic was approached not as an event, but as a moment folded into prayer, seasonal remembrance, and the steady calendar of worship. Each year on July 27th, the atmosphere surrounding Saint Pantaleon's relic remained notably restrained, with clergy and observers focusing on presence rather than outcome, reinforcing a pattern where the setting, the date, and the inherited practice mattered as much as what might occur. Descriptions from Madrid and Ravello emphasize that no external heat or handling guided the moment, only careful watching. A detail repeated across generations to underline restraint, ensuring the narrative stayed grounded in observation rather than argument or theological insistence. This careful posture reflects Saint Pantaleon's remembered life, where healing was offered without spectacle, and faith was practiced quietly, shaping a continuity between who he was believed to be and how later communities learned to hold his memory without forcing interpretation. Over time, the annual rhythm surrounding July 27th became part of local church memory, not expanding outward through proclamation, but settling inward, reinforcing trust through repetition, where meaning accumulated slowly, shaped by years, places, and unaltered practice. Thus, before any moment of change is considered, the story begins with discipline, setting, and inheritance, where Saint Pantaleon's presence is felt through continuity itself, inviting attention not to claims, but to the patience with which memory has been guarded. In the gathered silence, attention narrows as the vial rests untouched, and Saint Pantaleon's memory frames the moment, where observation replaces anticipation and time slows, allowing witnesses to notice change without prompting explanation or guiding gesture from those present within the church. On July 27th, the vessel is held steadily, not warmed, not shaken, while eyes remain fixed, and reports note a gradual softening, unfolding without announcement, as if the calendar itself governs the timing, rather than human intervention or expectation alone. In Madrid, caretakers describe the transition as measured, occurring during prayer, where the substance appears to loosen and most quietly, without heat. A change recorded repeatedly, yet received with composure rather than celebration or immediate interpretation within the familiar church setting. In Ravello, the same date carries a similar stillness, as observers note liquefaction without commentary. the moment unfolding amid coastal quiet, reinforcing continuity across places where shared practice outweighs distance, language, and differing local custom preserved carefully over generations there. Witness accounts emphasize restraint. No claims are announced, no conclusion imposed, only careful noting of texture and movement, as the substance behaves differently than before, prompting reflection delayed until after the ceremony concludes within the same sacred space and time. Across years, records mention that the shift is neither instant nor theatrical, but gradual, observed patiently, allowing the moment to pass without insistence, mirroring Saint Pantaleon's remembered humility rather than any demand for acknowledgement within annual observance on July 27th. The atmosphere remains notably calm, with clergy maintaining ordinary posture, voices low, gestures minimal, ensuring attention stays with observation, not reaction, and that memory forms through steadiness rather than heightened emotion or spectacle during the liturgy, each year there locally. Such restraint shapes credibility as repetition replaces argument, and consistency across Madrid and Ravello becomes the quiet measure, where the same date, practice, and outcome recur, leaving interpretation open, unforced, and deliberately patient within churches observance to generations there present. For observers, the significance lies not in proving cause, but in witnessing continuity, where change occurs without instruction, inviting reflection after the moment has passed, carried home as memory rather than declaration from the church into daily life afterward, quietly. Thus, the central moment unfolds simply, bounded by date and place, where Saint Pantaleon's relic shifts state, observed without force, leaving the ceremony to close in silence, its meaning entrusted to time within the church on July 27th each year. After the ceremony concludes, silence carries Saint Pantaleon's legacy beyond observation, where memory settles gradually, shaped by years of repetition, allowing communities to recall the annual observance not as an event explained, but as a moment received and carried quietly forward. In Madrid, records show that the annual observance left little commentary, as clergy closed the service without summary, trusting that continuity itself would speak. Preserving Saint Pantaleon's presence through practice, rather than proclamation within the church across generations over long seasons of return. In Ravello, the same pattern shaped remembrance, where coastal rhythms framed the relic's care, and Saint Pantaleon's story remained integrated into local worship, returning as a familiar interval rather than a declaration, demanding interpretation within the town's enduring calendar. Over centuries, church memory treated the liquefaction not as proof to argue, but as testimony to preserve, where restraint guarded credibility and Saint Pantaleon's name remained associated with patience, humility, and consistency, rather than spectacle or insistence within inherited liturgical life. Those who return year after year describe how expectation is reshaped, teaching attention rather than conclusion, as the memory of Saint Pantaleon forms through waiting, reminding participants that meaning often arrives after the moment has passed, within quiet personal reflection. Across generations, believers carried this remembrance into daily prayer, where Saint Pantaleon's example encouraged steadiness, showing that trust grows through continuity, not urgency, and that what is repeated faithfully often speaks more clearly than what is proclaimed loudly over long seasons of practice. Within church memory, the restraint surrounding the relic became instructive, as silence itself shaped belief, allowing Saint Pantaleon's presence to remain credible, grounded, and enduring. Without requiring explanation, defense, or reinforcement beyond careful observation within shared liturgical life across time and communities. Rather than expanding into spectacle, the story remained contained, passed through parish conversation and quiet teaching. Where Saint Pantaleon's name was spoken with familiarity, and the emphasis rested on faithfulness rather than outcome or prediction within ordinary Christian life together. Over time, this approach shaped how the miracle was remembered, less as a moment to be proven, more as a sign received. Where Saint Pantaleon's witness continued through repetition, humility, and the quiet authority of tradition within the Church's living memory. In the end, what remains is not explanation, but endurance, as Saint Pantaleon's legacy persists through careful keeping, inviting viewers to leave with stillness, carrying a sense of reverence shaped by time rather than words within shared Christian remembrance today.